a cheap city, but it can be visited on a tight budget. There's no question about it. And as Dan proves, you can do a lot of great things in Dublin on a very tight budget. So that's the spatial part out of the way. And then it's also, surprisingly, a journey through time, because you get to experience the history and the very, very rich tapestry that is the whole Irish experience, from the Celts up to the Viking forefathers, to Brian Boru and other historical and semi-mythical figures, right up to the very turbulent 20th century, and up obviously to the present day. Not forgetting the medieval aspect of Ireland and of Dublin particularly, which is excellently described in Dan's book. And like I said, it covers the centuries and millennia and reaches up to the present day. And I think this is where Dan's penmanship actually shines, in the present day, because to us Romanians, I think a lot of times Ireland is a pretty big unknown. It's kind of a mystery. We know that it's somewhere around the British Isles, and you will excuse me for saying so, but I think for us, when you think of people like, Oscar Wilde, James Joyce, I think they're pretty much British to us. The English writers, like the great Samuel Beckett, the great English playwright. And if there are other Irish people in the room, please don't throw beer bottles at me. But this is, I think, how we usually think about the Irish. We don't really see them as a distinct culture. And this is, I think, where Dan's brilliance really shines through, and that you've had a sample of this tonight, where he draws very interesting parallels between Ireland, both from a historical standpoint and a very social, a very lived-in point of view, and the Romanian experience. Not only from, maybe very obvious comparisons, right? Like their rebellion and our revolution. These, I think, are obvious and we can all think of them, but also in very small details, like comparing certain buildings to buildings of ours, comparing certain historical characters to our own mythical heroes and villains. He goes even as far as to find a medieval figure who presumably inspired Bram Stoker to create probably the most famous Romanian in the world, Dracula, or Dracula. So it's in these little details where you really experience the book. He kind of takes you out of that mindset of reading a travelogue, of reading a tourism guide of where to visit and what to see and how much it will cost. Yes, you get all that, but then you also get something very familiar, something that kind of endears you to Dublin, and you say, wait a minute, I know this, I understand this. Okay, when he compares a certain park to the grandeur of Herăstrău, you're immediately pulled in and you say, I see, I get it. And throughout the whole book, the great benefit is that it's very conversational. You don't really feel like it's a history lesson that you're learning. He's forcing you to learn in a very pleasant way, because at the end of the day, he does impart a lot of knowledge and a lot of facts and a lot of dates, a lot of characters, but you don't really feel like it's a history lesson, but actually that it's a conversation with a very interesting and fascinating and well-read character. Probably one of the most interesting people you'll ever meet. If you know people like Stephen Fry or Neil deGrasse Tyson, it's kind of like that. Just imagine strolling through the streets of Dublin with Stephen Fry and letting him tell you about the history, the culture, the town, and just small little tidbits, some fun, some more gruesome, but all of them very interesting. And at the end of the trip, you feel enriched by his knowledge that he kind of has imparted on you seamlessly. So you're learning, like I said, without even seeing without even feeling that you're learning something. So they're both great books. For my part, obviously, I enjoyed the historical aspect more than the social aspects. but I think there's something in them for everyone, whether you're a history buff or you just want to experience, have a pub crawl, experience social life and stuff like that. He has a lot of interesting museums, castles. I'm personally interested in Dublin, and I think I didn't know maybe 70-80% of what he's describing there, which was a very pleasant surprise. So he goes from the more famous landmarks like Trinity College and its famous library, the Book of Kells, to some of the maybe lesser known establishments, right? Like the Guinness Storehouse, which is basically just a landmark you visit when you want to pretend like you're interested in the local culture, but you just want to get plastered. Okay, so that's kind of might be up the wheelhouse of a lot of people. So there's a lot of richness and a lot of depth, and I read the book, and at no time did I feel like it's a Romanian book written by a Romanian guy, much less a guy I know. If it wasn't done and I didn't know his infectious passion for Ireland and for Dublin, I would have said that it's most certainly a translation of probably an Irish book, written by an Irishman, or that he used ghostwriters. I don't think you did you? No. As far as we know, he wrote it himself. But it's beautifully written, and it's...
I use a lot. Thank you. I use a lot of Irish books about Dublin, of course, but I went every place there and checked it by myself in Dublin. And thank you, Hemingway. Yeah, okay.
So he had to interject just so everyone knows he's well read. Right? He read a lot of damn books. So, but yeah, it's definitely a book, or rather, a couple of books. I can wholeheartedly refer to you because it's definitely an interesting read. And even if you're not planning on visiting Ireland or Dublin anytime soon, it makes for a great read if you're just interested in the history of Ireland, in the culture of Ireland, and maybe learning a few anecdotes that you can pop up in conversation and wow your friends, because like His Excellency say, they do have a lot of gallows humor, and a lot of their, and I think in that way the Schadenfreude and the Has de Necaz, as Dan said, is very similar to basically our own experience, because one of the more famous and one of my personal favorite songs of theirs is basically just them saying we have no heads, or rather singing we have no heads. And the whole lyrics are about how the English came and they chopped off our heads and they boiled them in oil, the children are leaving and we have no heads. And it's sung to this very upbeat and melodious tune, like if you didn't know the language, you think, oh man, that's such a cheery song, let's all break out in song and dance, right? But it's actually about how they all lost their heads, and not figuratively. So the book is full of that. I think Dan really captured the spirit and the essence of Irish humor and local customs beautifully. It shows you the like I said, the bright side, but also the weirder sides of Dublin. So it's definitely a fun read, and I can't recommend them enough. And obviously you can buy them, if you haven't already, or if you want a copy as a gift at the entrance of the pub. So thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And now you are.
And have fun for the rest of the night. Don't get too hammered, because there are plenty of surprises left.
Thank you, Horia. Now you understand why it's the third time near me here. I'm already with Hemingway level, so it's gonna be a fourth time and a fifth time, no problem. Mersi mult, Horia. Da, într-adevăr, am încercat să scriu cartea ca și cum aș vorbi cu voi, cum o prezint în Vamă. Primul volum este cu istoria Irlandei și cu sfaturi de călătorie. Al doilea volum este pur și simplu vă plimbați cu mine pe străzile din Dublin și vă povestesc nu ce fel de coloane dorice sunt în momentul respectiv la, Custom House. Custom House este o clădire foarte faimoasă și pe care au ars-o în război de independență. Ci vă povestesc cum a ars război de independență, e o nebunie absolut s-a întâmplat acolo, sau răpirile din spate, nu știu dacă știți, la un moment dat a fost o modă a răpirilor. mai ales catolicii, băieții catolici săraci, răpeau fetele protestante. Și după ce nu le făceau nimic în principiu, le duceau undeva o noapte, stăteau și după aceea erau dezonorate și trebuiau ca să se căsătorească